It's May, and despite it being the last month of spring, there's still absolutely loads of seeds that you can be sowing at the moment. So here's the full list of all the fruit and veggies that you can be sowing this month. Chicory is an absolutely brilliant winter crop that really comes into its own when everything else in the garden is dying back and looking really dreary. Now remember that it doesn't matter what colour of chicory you've gone with, the pink, the yellow, the white with speckles, or any of the purple varieties, all of them are green in summer. The colour comes out when the first frosts start to hit, and that stimulates all the colours to appear within the foliage. Pumpkins and squash are super fast growers, and they're very easy to grow really. You just need to give them the space to sprawl around and do their thing. And because they grow so fast, May's a brilliant time to sow them. So if you haven't got any in yet, you've still got loads of time to get these seeds sown. And if you've tried your pumpkins and squash and want to move on to something a little bit more interesting, have you considered sowing some gourd seed? So loofahs, that we're also familiar with, they are a type of gourd, but there's lots of other edible gourds as well. And they grow a lot like a pumpkin or a squash, but they tend to perform best in either a warm sheltered spot or inside a greenhouse or a polytunnel, where they are unbelievably productive. If you've never grown mangel wurzels before, you are seriously missing out, and I strongly recommend that you add them to your repertoire. They're super easy to grow, just like giant beetroots, but you don't multi-sow them because of the size, and May's a great time to get some in. If you haven't started tomatoes yet, don't worry. Again, they're fast growers and you've got time, so you can still start your tomatoes in May. But another crop that you should really think about trying are storage tomatoes. Now these are really commonly grown in Italy and they haven't really caught on as much here in the UK, but we want to change all that because these are amazing. Now you sow them late in the season, so sowing them in May is perfect because what you want is for the fruit to fully develop but not fully ripen by the end of the season. And then you pick all of the fully grown fruit but not ripe, and then you hang up all the trusses together and you create these huge bunches that traditionally in Italy, they hang in the rafters of the houses. Larger varieties get wrapped in paper like this and laid out in trays. And then what happens is through winter, these very slowly and gradually ripen and the sugars very slowly develop over time, and means that you can genuinely be eating your own homegrown tomatoes on Christmas Day and beyond in the UK. How amazing is that? And while you're getting your tomatoes in, don't forget to think about adding some tomatillos as well. Now these grow in a very similar way. Again, they're quite fast growers, but you eat them in a different way. Now, did you know that the tomatillo is the actual traditional ingredient that is used to make salsa in Mexico, not tomatoes? So if you want a really authentic Mexican experience, grab yourself some tomatillos. And you've still got time to get some cucumbers in this month as well if you haven't done already. Sprouting broccoli might be the furthest thing from your mind at this time of year, but actually it's something that should be sown around now. Now this is quite a slow grower and it takes a long time to develop. So if you want those bountiful early harvests at the beginning of next year, now's the time to get this in. Whether it's drying corn that you're a fan of, or sweet corn, or if you're growing both, May is a brilliant time to sow these. These again are really fast growers, so they do really well when sown in May. The thing to remember is that if you are growing both, you want a 2 to 3 week gap between sowings, because what you want to make sure is that they flower at separate times. That's because if you have a starchy corn, a drying corn, and it cross-pollinates with a sweet corn, it will mean that the sweet corn tastes bland and starchy, so it will ruin your sweet corn crop. If you sow them at separate times and they flower at separate times, you should avoid the worst of the cross-pollination. Now, broadleaf plantain might be something that you're used to seeing as a weed when you're out and about on a dog walk or something, but actually there are some highly ornamental varieties, and this is a fantastic future food to have in your garden. Plus, it's perennial, so you sow it once and you're going to have it for many years to come. And ours from last year is already coming back up in the garden. Courgettes are another super fast grower that do really well when started in May. Even with a late start, you are going to get huge bumper harvests from these amazing vegetables, and there are so many interesting shapes and sizes for you to try. You've got time to get a last crop of spinach in before the weather warms up too much and it starts to bolt. Another thing to consider trying is something like a perennial spinach. This is New Zealand spinach, and it will come back up if you mulch it over winter, giving you years of food. Why don't you consider getting some summer hardy brassicas in at the moment? So this is cabbages, cauliflowers, collard greens, kales, Chinese cabbage, standard cabbage. Just remember, when you're selecting the varieties, go for heat tolerant varieties. If you go for the cold tolerant winter varieties, they are going to hate growing through the peak of summer, and they're likely to bolt, which means that you won't actually get much to eat from them. At this time of year, I find it's really important to try and stay on it with the succession sowing of all your crops that you want to keep going all the way through the year. So these are your radishes, your leafy greens like mustards and lettuces, carrots, beetroot, anything like that, where you want to make sure that you have a continuous, gradual supply rather than everything ready at the same time. Beans are more fast growers that you can sow in May. And another thing that I'd really recommend is to sow some batches of dwarf beans towards the end of the month. Now, these are great for filling gaps in the garden where other crops have come out. Things like your onions and your garlic that are going to be harvested in summer and then leave a gap. You can fill that gap with dwarf beans and you will still get a really good harvest of them because they produce so much faster than the climbing varieties. Peas are another crop that you can sow in May, and even if you've already got a crop of peas in the garden, it's not a bad idea to get a second sowing in this month. You'll find that as the first crop starts to wind down and be less productive, this one will really get going. Both melons and watermelons can be sown this month, and again, they take off relatively quickly in the warm weather, so you can get away with a later sowing. Herbs are another great crop to consider trying if you haven't got some in already, and most of them can be sown in May. And this is a brilliant investment in your future garden because a lot of them are going to be perennial, which means once you've sown it once, you're going to have years and years of delicious food from them. And you've still got time to get your edible flowers in as well. So don't forget to get marigolds in this month if you haven't done already. Interplanted with tomatoes, they can really help to keep pests away. Calendula is super easy to grow, and at this point in the year you can basically just push the seeds in where you want them to grow and it will take it from there. And if you haven't got nasturtiums in already, you've still got time to do that. And again, you can just push these seeds straight into the soil where you want them to grow. Pansies and viola grow really fast and start flowering fairly quickly. Plus, most of them are perennial, so it's a one-time sowing. Our ones from last year are already flowering out in the garden. And if you haven't done so already, you should definitely be sowing some sunflowers this month. This is such a useful flower. There are so many different ways you can eat it. Do not have to be just roasting and snacking on the seeds. My favourite way to eat them is to save the seeds and sprout them for microgreens in winter. It's a fantastic fresh green food that's very quick to produce in the dark, horrible winter months. So there are so many things that you can be sowing this month. And if you haven't started your seed yet, don't panic. There is loads of time, and it tends to be that the warmer weather and the longer days that we get at this time of year means that things take off really fast. So there is plenty of time to get things sown and have an abundance of food all through summer and on into winter.